This meeting is called to order. We'll start with the adoption, or we'll start with a moment of prayer or reflection. Thank you. You can go.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Start with adoption of the agenda.
Are there any additions? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted.
Next, we have adoption of the minutes from our meeting of January the 4th.
Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will adopt the minutes.
Moving on now to reports. Our first report is the Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting of January 6th. The first item here is for adoption with associated resolution in your packets, 2019 and 2021 Fleet Capital Budget Amendment for Unit 361 and Unit 381.
Can I get a motion for the adoption, to hear this memo, this item for adoption and information?
I'll motion.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, we will vote. That is unanimous.
Our next report is item 8.2, the Public Services Committee meeting of January 10th. Again, this is for adoption and information with item 1, Community Vibrancy Advisory Board Sports Wall of Fame recommendation for adoption.
So just a little bit of the background of this. I'm going to make a motion for adoption of the Community Vibrancy Board's recommendation. They did review applications to the Sports Wall of Fame and brought forward to Public Services Committee the name of William Lauder, who, if you don't know, there's a fabulous picture of William Lauder, who was a boxer. And then he trained a lot of boxers in Medicine Hat over quite a number of years. It was like his lifelong commitment. And so I make a motion that we approve Mr. Lauder as the next addition to the Medicine Hat Sports Wall of Fame. That's what is up for adoption. The rest of it is for information.
And you're making a motion to receive the rest for information as well?
Yes, just wanted to highlight that one piece.
I'll second. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Hyder?
Through the chair, I just really enjoyed reading about Mr. Lauder, and what an amazing story that was, so thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Our next item is 8.3, the Council Employee Committee meeting minutes of January 12th for information.
Can I get a motion to receive this for
So moved.
I'll second.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Item 8.4 is the Administrative Committee meeting of January 12th with the grant-funded projects update for information.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Sharps?
Yes, I did have some questions. This is that, some of the MSP, ICIP grant funded, is that correct? Okay, so I do have questions, because the numbers weren't making sense to me, and I'm sure somebody can educate me on them. Let me just get to it, I apologize. It was in regards to, I know this is going to shock everyone, Town Square. I had questions regarding that budget. So I notice, I do apologize, I had it up and I missed my page. So from the last council meeting, I had said we were over budget, and I think, City Manager, you're gonna have to correct me here, I think I said like 350, and if I look at this, it's actually much higher. Can you just walk me through what this is? Because I feel like I'm getting a different number every time, and I don't feel like I'm completely understanding why we're over budget.
Through the chair, absolutely, and the discussion last time was surrounding the portion of the project that Ian Hakes was responsible for, and that was the number that he was speaking to. I think we also acknowledged that the monthly update on the capital projects associated with the stimulus funds were reported to council on a monthly basis, and that number was in fact quite different than the one that Ian was speaking to. In any event, Joe Cartwright, who runs the projects, is on the line, and I think Joe is prepared to take us through the budget discussion. Joe, are you on the line?
I am indeed, Bob. Good evening, Council. Through the chair to Councillor Sharps. Hopefully I can provide some clarity on this one, and understand that it's a little complex and maybe difficult to try and get everything, but I'll do my best. So, and I think it's important to remember how the funding came into play originally. So the budget started as a $2 million ask through the MSP program. Something that maybe wasn't too well known or contemplated at the time was that we knew right away that that $2 million was not sufficient to carry out the entire project. So as we went through design with Associated Engineering as our design consultant, a budget amendment was applied for and approved by the city manager in the tune of $1 million from Invest Medicine Hat's Briar Run project. And again, the MSP program, we had approximately $7.5 million total, and the budget was allocated to the other 4 projects first, and essentially what was left was put towards the town square to the tune of, again, of about $2 million. So there's $2 million from that funding. There was $1 million additional from Invest Medicine Hat, and then to further complicate things, as part of the city assets infrastructure rehabilitation work downtown, around the intersection of 6th Ave and 1st Street, $360,000 from the city assets group and the roads projects was also put towards this total budget amendment, which brought us up to approximately $3.2 million. So now that the construction is essentially nearing completion, or the main parts of the project are nearing completion, we're becoming a bit more refined on our forecast. And our forecast is getting closer to about $3.1 million is the total spend. That is including the $360,000 from the roads group and approximately $750,000 of capital from Invest Medicine. Is there any further questions?
Yes. So I'm going to just ask this question. So when you say from Invest Medicine Hat, we're talking taxpayer dollars, right? We're just allocating
Absolutely.
it from investment. So I just want to be really clear, because sometimes that can be very confusing and almost like it didn't cost taxpayers. So I just want all the cards on the table, because I think I know my frustration when it comes to these projects is not necessarily the project itself, but the communication surrounding the project. So maybe if we can start getting these cards on the table, we can start having some frank conversation. So when we're $1 million or 7.4 over budget, or 740 over budget, sorry, I just about made that 7.4 million. It's still taxpayer dollars that we need to account for. Okay.
That is correct.
Councillor Hirsch?
Well, and I appreciate the new council is trying to get their heads wrapped around these projects that have been now dated. And as Joe indicated, this was something that was a planned event. You know, you always have to tread lightly when other levels of government come with bags of money, and the strings attached was just absolutely incredible. And the amount of effort that it took for staff to come together and triage, coordinate upwards of how many projects are we talking about here that I'm looking at, and 7, 8, I don't know, but it's just a massive undertaking. So from a value proposition, again, we acknowledge that that was going to be higher. Again, the whole noise around how did we land on the projects, et cetera, was well explained. But my question is actually in reference to the ability that we were able to grant and get granted by other levels of government for extensions on some of these projects. And maybe, Joe, if you don't mind explaining which ones got the extensions, and are we on time, on budget with the other ones? And is there a likelihood that we're still on pace with the ones that have, because now that the date is past us, where are we at with some of these projects?
Absolutely. So through the chair, there were 5 MSP projects originally on the list. Gas City Campground, the multi-use trail development extension, multi-court pickleball facility, town square, and the BMX track upgrades. We applied for extensions for 3 of the 5. So the Gas City Campground, the multi-use trail development extension, and the multi-court pickleball facility. We were successful in the extension. So the new due date for expenditure of the grant funds is December 31st of 2022. Construction actually has progressed very well on all 5 of the projects. And that's an important thing to remember with the MSP projects, is that we didn't have to finish the projects in terms of construction. We only had to expend the grants. So for BMX and for Town Square, that we did not apply for extensions, the grant funding has been expended for those 2 projects successfully. Construction scheduling for the Gas City Campground, multi-use trail development extension, and the pickleball facility is really just seasonal deficiency work now. We have to wait till we have warmer weather in order to complete those projects successfully. So we'd be looking at Q2 of 2022 for final completion of those 3 projects. Town Square and BMX track upgrades will also be around that Q2 marker.
So just follow up, Mayor Clark. So Joe, what was remind maybe the audience again, what was the total grant funding that we received for all these projects? And this is new to Medicine Hat money that we're getting tremendous value of, except I know it's an inconvenience for others right now while construction's going on. But you know, it's gonna be worth the wait, certainly. But maybe you can remind us how much the grant funding was in total?
Through the chair, so there was 7.5 million for the town center, give or take 100,000 or a couple 100,000, and through the ICIP, with 80% funded from the provincial government or for the federal government, and 20% through city capital funds, were approximately $15 million. So 22.5 for the 2 programs, which was unbudgeted and unplanned for work.
Thank you.
Councillor, do you want to ask, sorry, Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, I have a question and a comment. My question is regarding some figures on page 81 about a $750,000 federal grant. And so I'm just wondering if you could provide some clarity on that. This is a grant that has been applied for, but we've not yet heard if we've received it, and it will cover some of the overages of the project, correct? Okay, thank you. And then the other, the comment was around the public washroom. So I would hope to see that we would be continuing to look at a way to create a public washroom in the downtown core, a feasible public washroom for people to use in off hours. I understand we have city buildings with washrooms, but a lot of those are closed outside of business hours or when COVID has cause those spaces to be close to the public, that they're inaccessible. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to look at the creation of a public washroom space in the downtown core.
City Manager Nicolai?
Through the chair, just to confirm for Councillor Van Dyke, that is under very active consideration right now, and we'll be bringing something back to council on that front.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Your Worship, just a general comment first and then a quick question. Happy to see that we are, as has been indicated, we have a number of projects that were kind of in a very hurried state put together, but have been moved along very methodically, appreciating the legend there that kind of describes any impediments to time or budget. The one that I'm strongly associated with and from my experiences in living this community certainly is Athletic Park and our beloved Mavericks. And so when I see that in yellow, I get a little bit of heartburn because I certainly, like everyone in this community, we love our Mavericks, we love our baseball, and we love our facility there. And so I am happy to see, although it is highlighting yellow, that it is indicating there is the jeopardy, if you will, or risk description is around the supply for supply chain around the netting, if that's what I'm reading carefully. So I can appreciate when I see that, it seems insignificant, and yet I know that it is an important integral piece to the whole project, and from a safety standpoint, it's necessary. So can you tell me or assure me, I'm asking you to, that short of the netting, it looks like we're on track to find an alternative to that, because that baseball season starts early, and it's not just our Mavericks, it's all the groups that have the wonderful opportunity to use that facility in the spring and well into the fall as well. So just a quick update on that, if you don't mind, Joe.
Absolutely. So through the chair, I am happy to report that the next month's update, that risk will be moving into the green. So we were successful working with our consultant and manufacturer and with the Mavericks Baseball Club to find a solution for the netting and a new supply chain partner to supply the netting that we needed to finish the project. So also happy to report that the structural steel has gone up or is going up for the shade structure, which was a pretty big milestone. And looking forward to seeing that completed. So should have some great pictures and some great updates for the next one. But risk has been definitely decreased on that project as we're nearing completion.
My heartburn is decreased as well. So thank you very much.
Councillor Robbins?
Through the chair, thank you. I drove past the new shade structure today and I thought, ooh, I know where to get my seats next time. I've burned my nose many times sitting watching the Mavericks play with no complaint from me. It just doesn't look great. So I'm looking at this list, and what I appreciate out of it is all of these decisions were not made by this particular council, albeit two of them were involved in the decision making. But I just wanted to highlight the things recreationally we can do, as I do sit on the Public Services Committee, so that's of great interest to me. So I'm looking forward to summer 2022 when things are going to be easy and we'll be outside and we'll be away from this terrible winter and all of the things we can do. I'm reading that I can go camping at Gas City Campground, which I could do before, but now there's more spots I can get, right? Is that right, Mr. Cartwright? He's nodding and smiling at me, okay. I can take my kids and myself on our bikes or our feet to the new trail, so the trail system is expanded. If I want to get into pickleball, which I have played, it's very enjoyable. The pickleball facility will be open by the summer, right? If I want to go walk over to a food truck, which was then walking distance of my house anyway, in Town Square and sit under the shade canopy there, I could eat some food that's probably not healthy but super tasty from one of our local food trucks. Maybe those healthy choices. So I look forward to that and when we're outside. And I don't know a lot about BMX, but I do know some kids who really, really like it. And I think my girls would get a big kick out of watching that big structure and how they just race down, and it's such a great start. So I'm looking forward to all of these things in the summertime. So I just wanted to thank everyone who worked on these projects, how quickly you worked on them, all the people who worked on the design and the construction of them. These are great things to be added to Medicine Hat. I appreciate what Councillor Sharps is saying about budget. I have a lot of the same questions. I'm glad she asked them so I didn't have to, but that's why I sit next to her. I congratulate and she asks the tough questions, but there's a number of things that are really going to improve the lives and recreation of the people of Medicine Hat. So I just wanted to thank everyone for their work and previous council for the decisions on these items. Do I agree with not all of them? Not necessarily, but the fact that they're here, I'm going to use them as a citizen. Thanks.
Councillor Sharps?
So I feel like I need to put something to bed, and I think I have before, but it keeps coming up. So I want to just address a previous comment and directly to Councillor Hirsch. I think it's really important to know, and Councillor Dumanowski, it's important to note that when I ask these questions, it's not because I don't understand a budget or how we got here. I can assure you I already have the answers. The reason I bring it up, number one, it is not to blame prior council ever, or staff or administration. We are current council and we will be held accountable to these decisions in 4 years, as we should be. So whether you decided this or not prior to the election, it's now our responsibility. Because in 4 years, you're not going to hear me say, sorry, that was the last council. This is ours and it's our accountability. So I will continue to ask those questions. So, and I think what's really frustrating for me, and again, thank God for Ramona and everybody else that's congratulating, I am not in any way frustrated with staff or anybody else, but I really want to look at these numbers. When we're talking about an extra couple of $1 million, and out of all these 5, there's only one project that's over budget, so, and it's the town square. So we have a parking lot that's $3.5 million. Yes, I'm being a little rough on this. But in 5 years, we're looking at making that high-density living of some sort. So do I get a little frustrated that we just had $3 million, $2 million of which was federal, and we made a parking lot that we're knowingly going to make high-density level in 5 years? Yes, I do. Combined with the fact, now I'm going to throw in the downtown business owner crap that I'm sure you guys all hate that I bring up, no washrooms. And I'm going to tell you, as a downtown business owner, I am incredibly frustrated when I pull into my property and I've got feces on my doorstep, because there is no place for these people to go. It's not cool. So if we're gonna build these nice, beautiful structures, I'm telling you, we have a responsibility in my mind. It's not just glam and someplace to eat. They deserve a place to go, number one. Number two, and that's just the vulnerable that I'm referring to there, but what about on regular Saturday when you got that place full of food trucks, where are these people going to the washroom? You know what they're going to do? They're going to go down to 2nd Street. They're going to knock on Station House or all the other stores down there and say, I'm just going to run in. And you know what? Those people down on 2nd Street and 3rd Street work really hard, pay physical taxes, and have been going through the COVID strain for 2 years and have stood beside us. So when I get frustrated that we are overspending, it's not because I don't understand a budget or I'm throwing you under the bus. This is our issue. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, I am on the list next to speak. I have a number of questions. So I just want to clarify the under forecasted budget, what you think will be over. That's actually 1.1 million, correct? That will be over budget in the end? Okay, and the city assets funded $360,000 of that. Was that for planned work?
That was for planned work. It was part of their infrastructure rehabilitation on the downtown core.
So why is it in this budget? Like, why is it
It was
attached to this project?
Sorry, through the chair. It was included essentially for convenience and to call it a marrying of interest because there was going to have to be work that was done down at that intersection anyway. So by combining the project, we save on terms of mobilization and design fees and a lot of those other costs and charges. So it was a way to save money essentially on the infrastructure rehabilitation by including as part of the scope for the town center project.
Okay, so when did you know that you were going to be over budget on this project?
Through the chair, so trying to put my hat back on, we would have known that it was going to require more than $2 million essentially minutes after putting the application in. To what extent was really flushed out in January and February when we had a chance to work with our design consultant. So there was a number of items that were put on the list as sort of must-haves and then some nice-to-have items. And some of those nice-to-have items, like the digital signage and like the washrooms, have been removed to keep the costs of the project where they are now. But it was felt that if we had cut any more, that we really were just getting a paved parking lot, and that didn't meet the intent of what we had applied for to the province for.
So given that we were in a financially fit position and we were making difficult decisions with respect to recreation centers, staffing, et cetera, did you consider redeploying the grant money to a different project that wouldn't be over budget?
Through the chair, I can take a stab at this, and others around the table may also have better insight than I do. We were not able to redeploy the funds to other projects from the MSP side of things. So if we had decided basically after October 1st of 2020 that we wanted to do another project, we would not have been eligible. There were no opportunities with the provincial government to change projects at that point. So that's one facet of the answer.
Okay, did you consider just not doing the project so we would not be over budget?
Through the chair, I don't believe I was specifically in a position to make that decision, that call. Discussions that I was part of at the time is that they felt that there was benefit. It was in alignment with council's strategic priorities at the time to revitalize downtown, including the recently approved municipal development plan. So the project did seem in line with council priorities at the time.
Was it taken back to council for further direction, given that it was going to be another million or more of a spend?
Through the chair, I can take the budget discussion. The opportunity to have foregone the $2 million did pass, so we could have not done the project once we realized that it was going to be higher than budgeted, in which case we would have lost $2 million worth of grant funding. And the province made it very clear to us at that time that grant funding that wasn't taken by one municipality would be allocated to another, so they would very quickly have reallocated those funds to another city. So we were faced with the prospect of either approaching the project and attempting cost control during supply chain troubles that were being experienced globally with the pandemic and the costs associated with the project itself. We could either proceed and try to control those costs, or we could stop and forego the $2 million. The AO bylaw 8663, I believe it is, grants the city manager the ability to reallocate funds. We do about $400 million a year in operating expenditures and another $200 million a year in capital expenditures. And the AO bylaw gives me the opportunity and discretion to reallocate those funds to meet operational needs. That was a decision that I made at that time, and that's why the project sits where it is.
Okay, so we are 55% over budget on this project, and it's an inferior project than when we started, but just saying that we're 55% over budget, is that generally considered a successful project?
Under the circumstances, given the $250 million worth of budget work that got done during the pandemic, I would call this a successful project.
Okay, I don't agree with that. If we're going to be 55% over budget, I would not consider that a success, especially given that the washrooms are not included. I also am wondering where we're going to end up on this project, because we have washrooms. I've heard about a skating rink online. I don't know where that's coming from. I'm just wondering, like, what the total cost of this is going to be.
The project in its entirety is what's in front of you today. If there are additions to that, those will be done as budget amendments in consultation with council.
Okay, so my final question is twofold. On page 92, we have item 4, Town Square, and it appears to be the only project that lists its objectives. And I will note to Councillor Sharp, there are other projects that are over budget as well. So the objectives of the Town Square are creating and sustaining local jobs, enhancing community competitiveness and productivity, positioning Medicine Hat to participate in future economic growth, and promoting job-creating private sector investments. Do you still believe that those are reasonable objectives for this project?
Yes.
And what is the intention for measuring them? What are the deliverables? How will you know whether we're successful on these items?
Well, time will tell, Madam Chair. This site has now been serviced. There's been probably $1 million worth of site contamination that's been removed. That was a significant prohibition to development for about 40 years on this site, back when it was Reedy Ford originally. I believe there's been at least 8 development attempts on this site, all of which were thwarted in no small part by the fact that there is significant site contamination with old foundations and concrete and unknown substances below surface. Those have all been cleaned up. The site has now been serviced with deep utilities and is available for development without those unknown development costs. So in terms of whether or not it will contribute to the long-term economic growth in the city, I would suggest that yes, it is poised and ready to do so. And the growth in the tax base that will occur when that development occurs will be the measure of that success. The other objectives associated with activity in the area are clearly served by the fact that the project was completed with local contractors, with contractors coming in and consuming accommodation and meals and other services within the city. That was the purpose of the $20 million worth of stimulus grant funding that was added to the budget, and I think it has served that purpose quite well.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not the Town Square that will promote these things. It's the fact that we cleaned up the site and serviced it. In which case, why didn't we just do that so that we could now have a multifamily, commercial, mixed use that was generating tax revenue if we were going to spend $1 million anyway?
Because the considered decision of the council that came before you, Madam Chair, elected to turn it into a town square and to have it ready for development should that development ever occur again. 8 or 9 development attempts had been failures, and the council of the day approved a project that called it a town square and configured it as you're seeing it now. That's why it was done that way.
Okay, and so in terms of actual, like in a project type measuring success, that would be, the measurement of success is that at some point it will have a higher, like a tax generating asset on it.
Madam Chair, that would obviously be one measure of success. If there are Medicine Hatters using the town square for events and activities all summer long, if the CCANs are leased out and people are enjoying the amenities that are associated with that, I would think that would be another pretty obvious measure of success. The project is multifaceted. It was selected and approved by a previous council, and it is now configured in accordance with what that council wanted us to build.
Okay, I will, and this is my last thing, but I will say, as awesome as it would be if it was well utilized by local people and everyone got a lot of enjoyment out of it, that's not one of the objectives listed. The objectives are creating and sustaining local jobs, enhancing community competitiveness, competitiveness and productivity, positioning Medicine Hat to participate in future economic growth, and promoting job-creating private sector investments. So I will move on. Council
Point of
Cano-
clarification, Your Worship. I appreciate the hindsight is always 20/20. The reality is, it was the previous council in this development was, if you recall, and which created the whole argument about the waterfront, that this was supposed to be just phase one of a redevelopment strategy for the waterfront district. So if you recall, and we took that prior council took that opportunity in the fact that this was something that, A, was not planned, that, if you recall, we had incredible constraints given by this government, the other levels of government, in terms of the capital project could not have been listed, which makes zero sense to not have any planning. But by all means, have something that you had in your back pocket, but didn't hit any list of capital projects. So did it make sense at the time? No, it didn't. Was there amount of money that made sense collectively within the vision of that previous council, to which this council can carry that ball or cannot carry the ball or whatever? But I don't want it to be the value proposition in isolation. We talked about a phased approach, to which we took the opportunity with this grant funding that came in as only phase one of a potential multi-phase development for the downtown and for the riverfront as we move forward. So any suggestion of in isolation of this event is probably not looking at the bigger picture.
Two things, Councillor Hirsch. I too am aware of the history of this project, and I would ask that you put your name on the list and wait your turn to speak. Councillor Canoto?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. So I just wanted to say that during the summertime, I had come across the major projects map and how I got to know as a citizen these projects popping up and the purpose and the grant funding that it was coming from, and that's something that I hope, you know, again, I'll go home to my Facebook account and post, because I think right now, as these projects are coming through and we get this list in our agenda package, there's going to be people that, again, due to their interests or their time or their schedule, will not go through the agenda. And I plan to post that, because I think throughout the summer, and I think before that, this map has drawn a lot of clarification for me as an outsider to the inside information that we have and the awareness that we have. So just thank you for that. Can you just tell me at what point does this map get updated? Can the people in the community expect like weekly updates, or how does that work?
Through the chair, I'll certainly take a stab at this one. The project management staff does coordinate with our corporate communications group, who provides those updates. I believe there's been some updates in terms of process and trying to make sure that the information on the website and part of that tool is as updated as it possibly can be. But I believe it's basically updated on not necessarily ad hoc, but certainly as significant portions of the project are completed or updates are kind of forthcoming. So there wouldn't be a lot per se right now, with most construction mostly paused in a lot of areas, but certainly in the summer, it's a much more frequent updating process.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Well, Your Worship, I was going to make a couple of comments even before some of the discussion debate occurred, but I did want to, and I had written down here, indicate that, I'm cautioning myself to even make the comment, but the reality of the matter is that the cost overrun is real, and certainly isn't meant to be disguised or somehow removed from true transparency, and that's why we see it in a real way here. And I welcome this kind of rich discussion and debate in in a transparent, real way, because it challenges all of us, past council, current council, and the recipients, taxpayer, to have a full view and understanding and appreciation one way or the other for the projects listed here, whether they're on target or not, whether they're on budget or not. My point was, when I said I wasn't going to say anything, I do recall in the mid-2000s when sat here and every budgetary item that came back was, I'm not even exaggerating, it was 30% to 150, 300% over budget. We didn't have supply chain to use as our rationale, or I don't want to say excuse, but as our rationale for those cost overruns. But a lot of it had to do with labor and other things. It was a hot market. And I remember sitting literally around the table going, how are we ever going to do business in a city where every project was, there'd be one bidder and it was twice the amount. So in many cases, we had to do what was suggested. We had to back up, we had to pivot, we had to cancel, we had to push forward or whatever. But in many cases, there were things that we couldn't do that with. And so reluctantly, but out of necessity, we moved forward. My point in saying that is, and I don't want to leave any kind of generalization that cost overruns are kind of the way things work in municipal government, but cost overruns are the way things work in municipal government, and it happens too often, unfortunately, and often at the expense of the reputation of government. Anytime the argument out there, or one of the general conventional thoughts is, as soon as the government bids for something, there's an automatic imposition financially to that municipality because people see it as an opportunity. Well, the municipalities or province or feds have money, so we can bid higher. And in some cases, it has to do with supply chain, which are real issues right now, or human resource, manpower, et cetera. But I wanted to kind of just say that when I look at the scheme of all the things here, and we have one or two, not saying that they're not insignificant at all, but the fact that we are able to be on budget with the others is quite remarkable. And I mean that genuinely. So the other piece I wanted to add is, and there's a lot of reference to the parking lot, and that's okay, and I'm not trying to get into semantics. It's the town square, and that's how it was envisaged, and that's how I liken it. It is going to act as a parking lot, certainly, and it's meant to, but it is going to be all the other things that we had discussed and had the belief in, and certainly staff went and executed. And if there's, I don't want to say blame, but if there's going to be criticism, it was the timing. We didn't want to leave money on the table. It was that we can only anticipate what we could anticipate. Supply chain, COVID, there are a plethora of things that kind of created these impediments. But we decided to stay the course, and I'm proud we did. And I think we will have a really beautiful project that people will enjoy in our community at the end. And I think we'll all come to appreciate that. I did want to say to Councillor Robbins, I mean, when you characterize that, and what came to my mind was there's something there for everyone. One of the things that when you're thinking about where you go on vacation with your family, or what are you going to have for supper, very contrasting examples, but sometimes you can never make everyone happy, or someone's going to be happier than the other person, but in the end, you try to find something that will satisfy everybody. And I think that was the goal here between the council and the staff at the time, and a very, very, very tight timeline and criteria, is how can we pursue projects that are going to benefit everybody? Somebody will walk away and go, I got something out of that. And I think we accomplished that. And I think in the end, when people get to, and some of the projects are done, people are walking the trails. I see them all the time, and not just the ones that were there, but the new ones. Something new, something exciting, right to, I wrote down here the pickleball. I mean, we've been working with that group for a long time, and I'm not trying to cherry pick things here, but that is going to be an absolute gem, and we are able to do that with these monies. So something here for everyone. Town Square, I'm proud to have supported, and glad we did. Just appreciating that most of the projects were on budget and on mark, and that's quite remarkable in a climate like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Sharps?
So I had a couple of questions, and city manager might be able to help me. I'm not sure if you saw that there was a YouTube video posted by members of IMH that there was an ice rink that was going to go there. Is that in current budget, or is that a budget amendment? Or, and I don't know how they're putting an ice rink anywhere near that, because there's posts everywhere now.
Through the chair, the operating parameters of the town square are yet to be determined, so there is a group working on that even as we speak. Whether or not an ice rink becomes part of that remains to be seen. So there is no current plan for a ice rink. That video, I have seen the video several times. It talks about the potential of a town square to attract and be meaningful as a recreational amenity in the community, and it will certainly serve that purpose. There are ice rinks that don't require frozen ice that you can skate on without the need for an ice plant. There's lots of technology that can be used for these types of applications.
Thank you, and I would agree, sorry, I did have two questions, I apologize. And I don't disagree with you, city manager. I guess it's that in order to put an ice rink there with the cones, or not the cones, but the steel beams, we would have to put them where the cars are. So I guess I'm just asking if, instead of trying to create excitement that backfired into where the heck are they putting an ice rink, if we could just get one project done before we spend another. I'm just asking, because, you know, it's people like me that are getting the text messages, where the hell are they putting an ice rink? Are they taking our parking away? And there's so much drama around this town square / parking lot that people don't want to hear this. So, you know, at the end of the day, if we're going to do it, can we put a budget number to it? I'm asking that we communicate really clear. But the one thing I did want to say, and again, this was pre-election, and I want to make sure this is very clear. I had actually met with developers, and I'm not saying you knew about this or administration, but I can absolutely 100% hand on heart tell you that a member of IMH met with a developer who made a full cash offer on that property prior to the money from the government being offered. And it was flatly denied and said, no, I've got other plans for it. So as a community member who wasn't going to run, this might have been part of the instigation of why I ran, I find that incredibly frustrating as a downtown taxpayer and as a citizen, because I want to stay in this community and I want to retire here, and I want our downtown walkable and livable, but we need that medium density, high density, so people are living here, because the minute people are living here, our crime rates go down, and people gather here and they use the restaurants, and parking lots don't tend to do that. So when I meet with this developer to find out if it's true, and then they start providing me all this documentation that actually made it to City Hall and it was stamped, and it's gut-wrenching. So when everybody around this table wonders why I don't let this go, know that I have documentation that says we had an opportunity, and I'm so frustrated as a citizen, but now as a council, I own this, and I'm the one responsible, just like everybody else at the table. So I have to bring this up, because it's not going to be good enough in 4 years to say, last council. We just can't keep blaming. We have to take the accountability. Starts November 1st, as far as I'm concerned, so we own it. And right or wrong, this decision has now been made, and I'm there. But I'm asking us not to keep making bad decisions or throwing good money after bad. If we're over budget and we don't have a washroom, we have a problem. And I'm done.
Okay, it's me again. I actually just had a question also, and I am really excited about a lot of the projects on here. Like, I think the BMX track is gonna, actually, I wouldn't mind hearing from them once. I think that was intended to maybe attract some tournaments or races to there, and I think it'd be really cool to hear about how some of that is going, or once they have a race there, a national race. On the town square, again, is there a plan in place, or are we developing a plan to ensure that the area is safe and secure at the nighttime? I know when we're putting the sea cans in, it's creating kind of an alleyway between each of the sea cans. There aren't any washrooms, but if we have washrooms, there's obviously going to need to be some additional security, or perhaps structural. There's certain types of washrooms you can get that it doesn't necessarily require security. What are our operational plans in terms of ensuring that this is a safe place to be at all times?
To the chair, from my perspective, as I mentioned earlier, the teams working on the operating parameters of the town square are active. I had a meeting with them this morning. So those parameters will be forthcoming. The safe design of the site is always part of what we do when we do designs, particularly in a downtown area. And the operating parameters will be coming forward to council in due course.
Okay, so we don't have any type of estimate of operational costs at this time.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any more questions or comments? Okay, we will vote. And we are voting on receiving this for information. It's unanimous.
And our last business item is reports for reception, the Police Commission meeting minutes of December 16th.
I move to accept this.
Okay, Councillor Van Dyke seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Canoto?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. So again, this is something that I likely wouldn't have divulged into reading if I hadn't been sitting in this chair. Just naturally, the amount of time it takes to go through a document like this, it takes time, and it's not always something that would be on the forefront of my to-do list. So it was really, really interesting, inspiring, heartwarming to see the work that our police force is doing. I think that I'm the kind of person that I think about what other people's lives feel like and look like, and our police service really does have a complicated job that they go to every day, and regardless of what position they're in, there's some hard work that is done, and the things that we learn about in a document like this, I just want to send my gratitude to those people in those positions, and I think that's kind of the gist of it is thank you to our police force and for those people sitting on our advisory with the advisory group for the police commission. It's an interesting dynamic to see what's happening with staff and then our leadership team. So just a thank you.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Well, Your Worship, it's funny when I look at this report from a lens of not being on the commission after quite a few years, but also having, sorry, Andy, our Councillor McGrogan sitting around the table and having the privilege to work with him from this end because I saw him in that role forever. So I just thought I would make that point known. But speaking to the report, and I appreciate Councillor Knodel's observations. It is a very complex service and often simplistically reduced, not naively, but simplistically reduced to, I see a cop drive around and then the lights are on and they're correcting somebody for speeding or something else. But it's such a multifaceted, strategically developed group of professionals who are just working tirelessly to keep our community safe. It's not a campaign year, so I'm saying that at a genuine commentary. I wouldn't say it otherwise. But the 2 points I wanted to bring up was the downtown patrol. I know has been there for some time and has become a regular facet of our community and our downtown core. I do observe that there, like the 4 occurrences or observations made are around suspicious persons or assistance requests or unwanted persons. But generally speaking, I guess some people might think it would be B&Es, break-and-enters, or it would be assaults, or it would be this. And I'm not trying to undermine or underappreciate some of the concerns that people have and continue to bring sometimes when walking in our core or anywhere else. But generally speaking, we do have a very, my observation and conclusion certainly is that we have a relatively safe, first of all, community at large, but that our downtown core and the work that they're doing is kind of reduced to the occurrences that could be felt by anybody anywhere, quite frankly, any part of the city. And so I just want to congratulate them on that work and reporting. And then obviously the fact that there is a recruitment underway, and I mean, I have nothing to do with it, but it's exciting when that interval of time comes around where you have a number of people who have had the opportunity to serve their career, their time, and move on and make space and open up for other members to come in. And it's just fantastic to see that they're looking to host a class of 8 to 10. I don't know how many out of that they'll recruit, but they are looking for people, and I've seen the campaign out there, and it's just exciting to see that because it means we'll have new professionals joining this group of already professionals serving this community. And I guess if you know somebody who's excited or interested in policing, now's the time to point their finger toward that service and get them in there, and potentially they can serve this community with pride too. Thank you.
I see what you're trying to do. Councillor McGrogan.
I just texted the new chief and told him he's getting some loving right now.
All right, Councillor Robbins.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I noted that, of course, we have a police commission. There's volunteers who sit on it, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I wasn't there, but 2 of the people that was their last meeting. Is that Chair Redden and Mandy Campbell? So I just wanted to make a point of thanking them for their service and to welcome the new people to the police commission as well.
Well said.
All right, seeing no more questions or comments, we will vote on reception of the report. And that's unanimous. Seeing no more business, this meeting is adjourned.